I was deadheading the roses along my front porch when my phone rang. It was a Tuesday morning in late October, the kind of cool, crisp day that makes you feel like the world is still good. I had my gardening gloves on, a cup of coffee going cold on the railing, and absolutely no reason to think that within the next hour my entire world would crack open. I didn't recognize the number. I almost didn't answer. Mom. My daughter-in-law's voice was so thin, so papery, that I thought the connection was bad. Mom, I need you. I pulled off my glove. Diane? Honey, what's wrong? Where are you? A long silence. Then, I don't know exactly. Off Route 9, I think. Near the old Cartwright farm. Mom, she did this. His mother did this to me. She said my family was trash. She said Marcus deserved better. And then, her voice broke completely. I was already walking to my car. I had known for 3 years that my son's wife, Diane, was not welcome in the eyes of my son's mother-in-law. I should clarify. Marcus is my son by marriage. I raised him from age 7 after his mother, my sister, passed. His biological father's family had never accepted that arrangement. They had never accepted a lot of things. But Evelyn, Marcus's paternal grandmother, the woman who controlled his father's entire family like a marionette with a silk string. Evelyn had taken her disapproval of Diane to a level I had not fully understood until that phone call. I found Diane sitting at the base of a rusted gatepost at the entrance to an abandoned property on the edge of Shenandoah County. She was in her car, which had a flat tire and a cracked windshield. I did not remember being there before. Her left arm was held tight against her body. Her lip was split. One eye was swollen nearly shut. She was 7 months pregnant. I got out of my car and I went to her, and I held her face in both my hands, and I said very quietly, "Tell me everything." She told me. 2 days earlier, Evelyn had called Diane and told her that Marcus had been in an accident outside Harrisonburg. Diane had driven immediately, hadn't even left a note, hadn't called Marcus because Evelyn had told her his phone was broken in the crash. When Diane arrived at the address Evelyn gave her, it was not a hospital. It was a private property belonging to Evelyn's brother, a man named Gerald who lived alone on 40 acres and did not welcome visitors. What happened in that house, Diane told me slowly and in pieces, while I sat beside her in the passenger seat with her hand in both of mine. Evelyn had been waiting inside with 2 other women I didn't know. They had said things to Diane. I will not repeat in full. Things about her family, her maiden name, the county she grew up in, the fact that her father had once been incarcerated. Things that Evelyn had apparently been collecting for years, like stones in a jar, waiting for the right moment to throw them. When Diane tried to leave, her keys were taken. When she raised her voice, she was shoved hard against a door frame. When she tried to call for help, her phone was thrown across the room and stomped on. She had eventually gotten out through a back window when Evelyn and the women went into another room. She had walked nearly a mile in the dark to her car, which had been moved and left with a flat tire on purpose, the valve stem clearly cut. She had sat there for almost 18 hours, too frightened to flag anyone down, too injured to walk further, before finally borrowing a phone from a passing driver who had stopped on his own when he saw her pulled over. That driver had a landline number written on a paper in her purse, mine, because I had insisted on it when she and Marcus married. Cell towers go down, I had told her. Old-fashioned, I know. Keep it anyway. She had laughed at me then. She was not laughing now. "We're going to the hospital," I said, "right now. And then we are going to do everything correctly and in the right order. Do you understand me?" She nodded. "And Marcus? He doesn't know any of this happened." Evelyn told him I went to visit my sister in Richmond. I sat with that for a moment. The audacity of it. The planning. "All right," I said. "Let's go." At Valley Medical, they took Diane back immediately. 2 cracked ribs. A hairline fracture in her left wrist where she had braced against the fall. Bruising across her left shoulder and the side of her face. The baby, a girl, they confirmed again on the ultrasound, was fine. Heartbeat strong. Moving around. entirely unaware of what her mother had survived to bring her safely to this moment. I sat in the waiting area and I called my brother. His name is Dale. He is 64 years old, retired from the Virginia State Police after 31 years, and he is the calmest person I have ever known in a crisis. When I told him what Diane had told me, there was a silence on his end that I recognized. It was not the silence of shock. It was the silence of a man organizing information. "Did she consent to a rape kit?" he asked first. "The assault was physical, not sexual. But they're documenting everything." "Good. You need an advocate in there with her if possible." "The hospital has one on call." "Okay." Another pause. "Eleanor, I need you to listen to me carefully. Do not call Marcus yet." "Dale." "Not yet. If Marcus calls Evelyn before law enforcement is involved, evidence disappears. You know how that family operates. Give me 2 hours." I knew he was right. It was the hardest thing I had done in years, sitting in that waiting room knowing Marcus was somewhere thinking his wife was visiting her sister, while his wife lay in a hospital bed with 2 cracked ribs. I am 63 years old. I have buried a husband, raised a child that wasn't mine by birth, but was entirely mine by love, and watched more than my share of hard things unfold in this life. But those 2 hours in that waiting room were among the longest I have ever lived. Dale arrived at the hospital at 2:30 in the afternoon. He came in through the main entrance in civilian clothes, calm as always, and sat down across from me with a legal pad. "Tell me the address Evelyn gave Diane," he said. I told him. He wrote it down. "Gerald Hutchins," he said, almost to himself. "That property's been in that family 40 years. County Sheriff's Office has 2 prior calls to that address. Domestic disputes, both times, nothing pursued." He looked up. "That's gonna matter. What's happening now?" I made some calls. There's a detective out of Rockingham County who's been looking for a reason to talk to Evelyn Hutchins for about 8 months. Something connected to a property deed transfer that didn't sit right. Your daughter-in-law's statement is going to open a door that's been stuck for a while. He folded his hands on the legal pad. "This is going to move fast once it moves. Are you ready for that?" "I've been ready since this morning." Dale nodded. "Let's go talk to Diane." In her hospital room, Diane was propped up on pillows. The baby monitor clipped to her finger, her fractured wrist wrapped and elevated. She looked at Dale when I introduced him and she said, very quietly, "I want to press charges, all of them. I don't care how long it takes." Dale said, "That's the right answer. We called Marcus at 4 o'clock. I made the call." I kept my voice steady. "Marcus, I need you to come to Valley Medical in Woodstock. Diane is here. She's going to be all right. The baby is fine. But I need you to come now, and I need you to come alone." The silence on his end lasted about 3 seconds. "What happened? Mom, what happened?" "I'll explain everything when you get here. Drive carefully. She is safe." He arrived in 40 minutes, which meant he drove the whole way from Winchester doing at least 80. I met him in the parking lot. He was gray in the face. I took both his hands. "Before you go in," I said, "I need to tell you what I know so you don't walk in there and fall apart in front of her. She needs to see you steady." I told him. I watched his face go through things I won't describe because they are his alone to carry. When I finished, he stood there for a moment looking out at the parking lot, jaw tight, hands still in mine. "His mother did this," he said. "Not a question. Yes. Deliberately. She planned it. Yes. Deliberately. She planned it. Yes." He was quiet for another moment. Then, "Is Dale here?" "He's inside." "Okay." He straightened his shoulders. He took a breath. "Okay. Let's go." Whatever Marcus felt in that moment, he walked into Diane's room the way I raised him to walk into hard things. Upright, present, and with his whole heart open. I watched from the doorway. He sat on the edge of her bed, and he took her uninjured hand, and he did not say anything for a long time. He just sat there. That was the right thing. I've always been proud of who he became, but I was especially proud in that moment. Dale walked me down the hall to a family waiting room, and we sat together, and he briefed me on what would happen next. Diane's statement had been recorded by the hospital's patient advocate. A detective from Rockingham County would be taking her formal statement the following morning, because the assault had taken place on Gerald Hutchins's property. The county sheriff's office was now involved. Because Diane was 7 months pregnant and the assault had caused documented injury, the charges being considered included felony assault and unlawful imprisonment, both of which carried significant weight in Virginia. "What about Evelyn specifically?" I asked. "She's the one who made the false phone call to lure Diane there. That's part of the conspiracy to commit. The other 2 women are being identified." He paused. "Eleanor, you should know. Once formal charges are filed, this is going to reach the rest of that family very fast. Marcus's father is going to find out." Marcus's father, Robert, had been largely absent from Marcus's life since he was 11. He lived in Richmond now, remarried, kept a polite distance that suited everyone. His relationship with his own mother, Evelyn, was complicated in ways I had never fully understood. "Let it reach him," I said. "He should know what his mother is." Dale nodded slowly. "There's one more thing." He set the legal pad on the seat beside him and turned it so I could see. There was a name circled at the bottom of a list. "This property that Evelyn and Gerald's family hold. There are irregularities in a deed transfer from 2019. An elderly neighbor sold a strip of land under what the county assessor now believes may have been false pretense. That's a separate matter, but it's been sitting open. Your daughter-in-law's case is going to pull that thread along with it. So this isn't the first time." "No," Dale said. "It is not the first time." I thought about Diane walking a mile in the dark with 2 cracked ribs and a fractured wrist, 7 months pregnant, too frightened to flag down a car. I thought about 18 hours alone in a broken-down car on the side of a road. I thought about Evelyn sitting in Gerald's house, probably back home now, probably assuming Diane had been too afraid to say anything. "Dale," I said. "Yeah. Thank you for coming." He looked at me the way he has looked at me my entire life, the way only a brother who has known you since you were 5 years old can look at you. "You called me," he said simply. "Did you think I wouldn't come?" The formal statement took 3 hours the next morning. A detective named Paulson drove up from Rockingham and sat with Diane and Marcus and a victim's advocate, and he was thorough and unhurried, and treated Diane with a dignity that I was grateful for. I sat in the waiting room again, this time with coffee that was actually hot, and I read the same page of a magazine probably 11 times without retaining a word. When they came out, Diane looked exhausted but lighter somehow, like something that had been pressing on her chest had been acknowledged and named and was now someone else's problem to carry. "She asked me one thing when it was over," Diane told me later. "Meaning Detective Paulson? He asked me what I wanted the outcome to be, not what I thought would happen, what I wanted." "What did you say?" Diane looked at her wrapped wrist. "I said I wanted her to understand that what she did was a crime, not a family disagreement, not discipline, a crime." She paused. "He wrote that down." Evelyn Hutchins was arrested 11 days later at her home in Edinburgh. Gerald Hutchins was arrested the same morning. The 2 other women, Evelyn's niece and a longtime friend, were taken in for questioning and subsequently charged as accessories. The charges against Evelyn included felony assault causing bodily harm, conspiracy, and unlawful restraint. Because of Diane's pregnancy at the time of the assault, the prosecutor added a sentencing enhancement. I did not watch the news coverage. Marcus called me when it happened, and I sat in my kitchen with my hands wrapped around a mug of tea, and I listened to my son tell me that the woman who had terrorized his wife had been put in handcuffs in her own front yard, and I said, "Good." He said, "Dad's family keeps calling. You don't have to answer. I know." A breath. Mom, how did you know? That morning when Diane called, how were you so calm? I thought about that for a moment. I wasn't calm, I said. I was just in motion. There's a difference. He was quiet. Dale taught me that, I added. A long time ago, when your mother died and I didn't know what to do, he said. You don't have to know what to do. You just have to take the next step. So I took the next step. You always do, Marcus said, and the way he said it, I had to put the phone down for a second and look out the window at the backyard, at the roses I had been tending when all of this started, still there, still standing, unbothered. Diane delivered a healthy baby girl on January the 4th, 7 pounds 2 ounces. They named her June. She has her mother's nose and her father's stubbornness already, you can just tell. When they put her in my arms for the first time in that hospital room, she looked up at me with that unfocused, ancient gaze that newborns have, like they've just come from somewhere wise and haven't quite decided what to make of where they've landed. Hi, June, I said. You have no idea what your mother did to get you here safely. Diane, from the bed, said, She'll know. I'm going to tell her everything. Good, I said. She should know. The civil case is still pending. Evelyn's attorney filed 2 motions that were both denied. The property matter Dale mentioned, the deed irregularities from 2019, has been referred to the county attorney's office as a separate proceeding. The elderly neighbor, a 78-year-old woman named Mrs. Phelps, has been connected with a property rights organization that is helping her pursue recourse. Dale checks in on that case periodically. He doesn't say much about it, but I know he's watching. Robert, Marcus's father, called Marcus once after the arrest. I don't know what was said. Marcus didn't offer and I didn't ask. Some things between fathers and sons are not mine to hold. What I do hold, the memory of finding Diane at that gate post. The look on Marcus's face when he walked into her hospital room and chose, in that moment, to be steady. Dale's handwriting on a legal pad, calm and precise, moving through chaos like a hand through water. Little June's face, unfocused and new, held against my chest in a hospital room in January. And this, Evelyn had called Diane's family trash. She had said the name Diane came from wasn't worth the paper it was printed on. She had said Marcus had lowered himself. She had believed, apparently for years, that a person's value could be read in their origins, in their father's record, their county of birth, the roughness of the road they came up on. I have lived 63 years. I raised a child who was not mine by blood and watched him grow into one of the finest people I know. I have seen what actually builds a person, not the name they're born with, not the property their family holds, not the connections they can leverage. It is the willingness to walk a mile in the dark with cracked ribs because you refuse to give up. It is the person who answers the phone at any hour. It is the brother who comes without being asked twice. That is the only bloodline that has ever mattered in my family. June knows that now. We're making sure of it.